how can people get out of their own way? Like, have you got any? I'm steering in this direction because you're the hacks queen. So what hacks can people use to actually start getting out of their own way? Because it's my worldview is that if everyone stopped having, fundamentally the only real reason on a quantum level that I couldn't spontaneously grow wings and fly away right now, if you really, 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 really get down to it, is because at some level I just wouldn't believe that it's true, right? I just wouldn't believe it. I'd be like, come on. I mean, look, I can believe in a lot of stuff, but spontaneously growing wings and flying away, I mean, that's probably just a bridge too far. And so to the degree that I can't get over the limiting belief is to the degree that I can't, and this is going to sound wacky to someone, like fucking grow wings and fly, but like on a theoretical level, like for anything to be true, the only, like at a quantum level, the only limiting factor is our ability to know that it is true, to genuinely get out of the limiting belief and to be able to create that perception of reality, which the act of creating and perceiving, the observer effect, creates it. And so bringing this all the way back then to things like happiness, success, well-being, achievement, these things that are more tangible and more realistic than growing wings and flying away, what practical advice or hacks or steps or strategies do you have that you can help for people to remove their limiting beliefs?
Yeah. So hack one, actually look at the worst case scenario. So everyone has the fear that's stopping them from doing it. And they go, oh, I can't do that because, my business will collapse. And I go, let's stop there. So hack one is going, what would actually happen to your life if your business collapsed? And get them to look at it. And usually, I haven't come across one where the whole life goes to threads, but they actually think out what that worst case scenario is. And that worst case scenario is never anywhere near where their fears or their beliefs say that they will. So that's hack one. Hack two.
Can I stop you there? I just want to sort of challenge that thinking a little bit, right? Because I think it's useful. I actually have a different perspective on that if you follow the thread of what's the worst that could happen, ultimately it always ends in death, right? If you continuously follow that thread, right? Okay, so what could happen? The business could collapse, and then my wife might leave me, and then I'm going to, then this could, and eventually if you just keep saying, and then what would be the worst thing that could happen? And then it ultimately always ends in death. But that can actually be a liberating phenomenon, not a disempowering one. It can be an empowering one. And to the degree that you don't have to just make a decision of like, would I die for this choice? That's not actually where it gets to, but you suddenly get to a position where it's like, okay, on the absolute extreme end is death, but the reality of that happening or the probability of that happening is pretty unlikely. And then it's kind of like, it's almost like price anchoring in sales. It's like, well, the extreme end is death. So everything above that is like a gradient of success. So, all right, and it kind of puts things back into perspective. It's like, well, I mean, I'm probably not going to die. So, okay, so this really probably isn't that bad. And so I've actually found that to be tremendously useful, particularly when the stakes are high, to go, okay, cool. Well, this is what it really looks like. And so, of course, it never usually ends up that way. But I think there's an empowerment in first confronting that reality or fear setting to a certain degree to go, okay, cool. Like, let's get real. How bad is it going to be? What do you think about that idea, that perspective or point of view?
Absolutely agree. And I've had so many conversations with clients, and even one this week, who had that fear of really marketing their business. And I said, but 2 weeks ago, you jumped out of a plane. Tell me if that is not hurtling to the ground towards your death. Like, what happened in that instance and versus this instance? Like, you could have died jumping out of that plane, but you chose to do it. You willingly chose to do that. That was a death experience. But marketing your business, like, let's draw the link between the two there. And another saying, and it's like almost a mantra, was that I put to people as well, at least you're not going to die. Because that is the worst case scenario. Well, it doesn't have to be the worst case because it is quite a liberating.
Totally. It's an outcome. It's not good or bad unless we apply meaning to it anyway. I think it's an interesting lens to put over things to make that kind of discernment, because then you've also got to then layer over the context of ultimately we're all going to die. Now, good or bad or whatever, however you want to think about the more transcendent version of a total reality and what is death and all these other kind of questions we could delve into if we really didn't want to go hard into it. But ultimately, you have one life as we know it. In the current format of our perception of reality, you only have one life. So ultimately, all you have is death. And so you've got to make these decisions also against that lens of like, am I going to be satisfied if I get to the end and ultimately face that reality and haven't done this thing? If the absolute worst case scenario is I end up in that state, but I'm going to end up in that state anyway, what in fact do I have to lose by taking the chance? What are your thoughts on that?
And that's the thing, Goose, is that 90% of us on our deathbeds regret that we haven't lived a life of our choosing in alignment with ourselves. We haven't played in the space that we should have or wanted to, and we just haven't been living in alignment with ourselves. And I look at that stat from Dan Pink's work, and it makes me a bit sad that so many of us get to the end of our life and we have that regret.
So I know we're not even on hack 2 yet, but how can people define or align themselves with a version that is going to be them living their greatest potential? Like, does that make sense? Like whether you want to define it as like on purpose or in alignment with their values or whatever, like most people, they get to the end of their life and they're like, damn it, I didn't do the stuff that would have been the most fulfilling version of this reality. How can people align themselves better to that version of reality?
So that's where our subconscious and unconscious mind comes in. That never lies if we're willing to listen to it. And so it's about sitting in a quiet spot, and you can either visualize, and when you visualize, visualization is a gateway to open yourself up to your unconscious and subconscious mind, or we call intuition or gut or heart-led. So if you get a random thought that comes out of nowhere, like it happens to me a lot, but one of the biggest random thoughts that came out of nowhere a couple of years ago, me heavy in the corporate world, the random thought came to, what if you didn't have to work in corporate? And I went, I'd never known anything like that. Now, most people will dismiss that. They'll dismiss it and go, that's a silly idea, and on they go. Back in the work trenches, putting on, day after day, living the same groundhog loop day after day. But that little fun question from your intuition or, subconsciously, if you listen to that, that's how you can get into alignment, live on purpose, live to your values, ensure that you live a life that you don't regret.